Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I thank Elaine Smith for the opportunity to debate one particular aspect of railways in Scotland, because I think there is a very broad consensus that welcomes the very substantial investment and continuing development of railways across Scotland. But the issue that's before us today is an issue that relates to trade unions and the relationships that they have with their employers. And let me absolutely start by commending the work of the STUC and the rail unions, one of which is in dispute with First ScotRail. In particular, I'd like to highlight a number of discussions about whether it would be possible for there to be a bid for the next franchise in 2014, which is a greater public interest component. We see elsewhere a cooperative venture looking at the East Coast franchise. We look at the Go exclamation, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, a cooperative that is looking at running services in parts of England. The STUC remain interested in the proposals we've made on this front, and discussions that we've been having over the last year will no doubt continue. It is, of course, the responsibility of trade unions to represent and to protect the interests of their members. And I have, of course, been happy to respond to the request, for example, from the STUC and others to contact the Office of Rail Regulation and Network Rail last year about the programme of renewals on the rail network. Turning to the matter of ScotRail industrial relations, I'm pleased that ScotRail has guaranteed there will be no compulsory redundancies of loss of current terms and conditions for any members of operating staff, including conductors, as part of driver and ticket examiner operation on the Airdrie Bathgate service. Let me just wait a wee bit, but I will come back to Mr Gordon, if I may. I was just going to pick up a couple of points, perhaps, that Mr Gordon himself has said in relation to who has been involved in this. We do look at what has happened in parts of the Scottish network, where 56% of rail journeys are supervised by ticket examiners. Mr Gordon.
Charlie Gordon.
Published correspondence shows that ScotRail management were not minded to have driver-only operation in the Airdrie Bathgate line, but they were instructed to go ahead with these arrangements by Transport Scotland. Did Transport Scotland clear that with you, Minister?
It's important to realise the proposal for the operation of the line came from First ScotRail. It is, of course, necessary to discuss with Transport Scotland to operate supervise the franchise, the arrangements that are made. This debate, of course, is about safety, and that is why, when I met the unions on the 5th of January and subsequently again in March when I received this safety dossier, we have at every stage sorted and received advice from the Office of Rail Regulation, the Rail Accident and Investigation Branch and the Rail Safety and Standards Board, on which, of course, the RMT have representations. The advice is very clear to ministers, to Transport Scotland, to First ScotRail, and because we've published it to everyone else. The advice confirms that ScotRail's proposals for driver and ticket examiner operation on trains are a safe method of operating trains, trains that will be used on the Airdrie Bathgate service. It's an extension of the Helensburgh-Airdrie Drumgelloch line, extended to Bathgate and on to Edinburgh to form the new service. These trains currently operate with driver and ticket examiner. The Airdrie to Bathgate section and beyond would naturally extend this operation. 47 million journeys a year in Scotland already operated by this method. Now let's talk about some of the financial issues. The ScotRail franchise contract does contain a clause which allows the franchisee to ask for reimbursement of net losses as a result of industrial action. Yes, Mr.
Bill Butler.
I thank the Minister for giving way. Will the Minister take this opportunity to give Parliament an assurance that taxpayers' money will not be used to indemnify First ScotRail under any circumstances whatsoever?
driver. The contract before me is quite clear, but I can absolutely tell Parliament and everyone else that we have not been advising ScotRail on how to manage the strike. We have not made a decision to reimburse any losses they can demonstrate. We have not compensated ScotRail for losses from strike action. We have not paid training costs relating to the strike. And in addition, if a claim is made, before coming to any conclusion, which we are contractually obliged to do under the franchise that we inherited, we will consult with the STUC, we will consult with the unions. I think that is very, very important safeguard. I'm going to have to make progress. I've still quite a lot to cover in a short space of time. I think one of the very important things we must draw ourselves to is that uniquely in the GB rail network, the franchise contract for ScotRail specifies a second member of staff on board in addition to the driver to perform revenue protection and customer care duties. Mary Mulligan referred to the issue of women travelling alone. Well, of course, by having that provision, we have someone on board to look after the customers who are using our trains, a very important and unique provision in the GB rail network. And of course, all staff who are on board are trained in evacuation procedures. Different parts of our railway network are different technologies, so the training fits the technologies that are important. Having had the expert opinions of the ORR, the RAIB, the RSSB, it is clear that everything that is said to me is that driver and ticket examiner operation is an appropriate and safe method of operation for the Airdrie to Bathgate service. Gavin Brown asked, have things changed? He asked, is detail available? And he talked about historical accidents. I think let me just give a context. What we provided to these three bodies was a copy of the dossier that the RMT provided to us. They were responding to the contents of that dossier and to some extent saying that it is intrinsically not necessarily a complete picture. But in the letters that they've sent us, they're quite clear about what is safe and what is appropriate. And indeed, in the RSSB letter, they carried out a review of data from March 09 to December 09, which on one aspect of operation shows that where the driver opens the doors, the injuries on alighting and mounting trains are 1/3 of the rate that they are when the train doors are opened elsewhere. It's important that we now deliver this project on time and on budget. We deliver the 130 additional jobs that will be created. We continue to grow the railway network and the services upon it. 25% increase in employment in the railway network since the beginning of this franchise. Increases in the numbers of conductors. Further services are planned with more conductors. The appropriate way to deal with this dispute is now for ScotRail and RMT to sit down. Together, I urge them to do so.